Okay. Originally, I was going to preface this discussion just to say the title may have been slightly misleading, that there was going to be maybe cake or humour, and unfortunately there actually was cake, so I can't really start like that, but I will start anyway. So if you want to follow along, all the notes, this slideshow is already online at rl.cm/Ezy-bake. Resources, everything is there. Eventually the video will be there. It'd be nice if the video was there already, but apparently it doesn't work that way. But my talk today is about Drupal distributions. So, who am I? And what do I know about distributions? My name is Stuart Clark. I'm a part of Reality Loop here in Melbourne. And I've been involved in Drupal for about 6 years now. Now, the first few years were just really as a hobbyist, a bit of a module developer, but eventually I decided that I wanted to do it professionally, and I did that. I got a job in the city and I started building websites. One thing I noticed after maybe a couple of months with doing that is that building Drupal websites, it gets a little bit tedious. The core, the complete basics of building a Drupal website is go to drupal.org, download a copy of Drupal, extract it, move the files into the appropriate place on your computer or server, make a couple adjustments to a few files, run install.php, then sort of rinse and repeat with the modules and the themes and everything you want, and it can be a little bit time consuming. And especially after you do it day after day, you tend to find that you're downloading the same files every time, you're downloading the same themes, you're installing the same things over and over and over. So I thought there must be a better way, and that's really what I'm here to talk to you about today. So there's a few key tools that make that better way. The first one is a tool called Drush, which when I first heard about it, I thought, sure, this sounds really good, but it also sounds extremely complex, and I don't know if I'm ready to go down that track of having to install this utility on my computer, especially when I started working with a Windows machine, because installing Drush on Windows is a nightmare. And I thought, what's the point? I mean, what do I really want to do this for? But there is a very, very, very good point, and it is that you don't have to go to drupal.org. You don't have to download all these zip files and extract them and move them all around the place, because with Drush, you can simply type drush space DL space whatever. If you want to download Drupal-7-.11, you just type that in the command line and it downloads. And it extracts, and it puts the files there, ready to go. If you have a site ready and going, and you need to download, say, Omega or Zen base themes, you just type drush.dl Zen or drush.dl Omega, and it works. It's easy. So that was one of the first things that started making my life a little bit simpler. And most developers would probably want to make their lives simpler, because there's nothing like doing menial tasks day after day to really keep your drive going. So I'm really all about, getting rid of those menial tasks. The next tool is one that Dimitri Gaskin has already mentioned, which is Drush Make. So Drush Make allows you to build up a recipe of a site with everything that your site is going to need, and then build it with a simple command, which is drush make, the name of your Makefile and where you want those things to go, and it will go and download Drupal core. It'll go and download your base themes, it'll go and download all your modules that you want, and it'll extract them and it'll put them in the right place that you told it to put them. And fantastic. I mean, again, once you've got Drush, that's a really simple thing to go down the track of, because Drush is that, the first little bit of confusion of like, why do I want to do this? Once you've taken that plunge, Drush Make is just so easy to add on to that, and it helps you tremendously. The next thing is features. Features is, again, another wonderful tool. I don't know how I could be without it, because what I noticed, obviously the tedium of having to download all these modules and extract everything, that wasn't the only tedious thing. The other tedious thing was I built a photo gallery for client A, and client B also wants a photo gallery. Why do I build it again? I've already built it. So with features, I can just build up a bunch of features and put them from site A or site B, and I don't have to do anything. I just turn it on and there it is. It's ready to go. All my views that I've chosen to export, all my variables that I've chosen to export, anything that you can think of, it's generally exportable via features. So these three tools, Drush, Drush Make, and features, they are generally the basis of building a distribution. Okay. So, what are Drupal distributions? Who here knows what a Drupal distribution is? It's a pretty good number. Okay. For those of you who don't know what a Drupal distribution is, it's pretty simple. It's really just a custom package that contains Drupal core, be it Drupal 6, Drupal 7, or some form of PressFlow or any other Drupal core that there is available, plus generally an install profile, some custom and contrib modules and themes and third-party libraries, etc. It's a big bundle of a specific configuration of Drupal. So there's a few distributions that you've probably heard of. Even if you didn't know what a distribution is, you've probably heard of Open Atrium. It's been mentioned a couple times at this conference already. Open Atrium was originally created by Development Seed, and for myself and a lot of people that I've spoken with, Open Atrium is probably what put distributions really in the forefront in the Drupal community. It may not be the best distribution there is out there, but it is a fantastic distribution, and it really shines the spotlight on distributions. But it's not the only distribution. There's quite a few. So this is just a very short list of them. But Acquia Drupal by Acquia. COD. COD was used to build the Drupal Down Under website. So it's the Conference Organization Distribution. Yeah, something like that. Drupal Commons, again, by Acquia. Managing News, which is it was originally created by Development Seed. I don't know if they sold that as well. And PressFlow, which is a different kind of distribution. It's more of a real distribution as it's modifications to the core itself. If you want to find out more about these sorts of distributions, you can go to drupaldistrowatch.com, and they have a big list of many of the available distributions. But we're not here to talk about those sort of distributions. What I want to talk about is personal distributions. So, what are personal distributions? Personal distributions are exactly that. They are your personal distribution. It contains your code, your toolkits, your themes, your base themes. It contains everything that you use when you make your website. So if you're churning out a couple of sites a month, there's a very good chance that you've got your best practices already worked out. And these are the things that you should be compiling into your distribution. You know that you're going to be using context module with a specific layout for your pages. So you want to put that into your distribution so that you don't have to recreate that every time you make a new website. That is what a personal distribution is. Why build them? What's the point? Well, what's the point in anything really, but time. Time is the most obvious point. I mean, the first distribution that I built, For the first Drupal shop that I worked in Melbourne, we estimated that it saved us upwards of 3 days per every website that we built. Now, 3 days is a huge amount of time. It's a huge amount of money. And if you do it right, when you build a website from your personal distribution, you could really get it all nutted out so that you could actually have a site go from nothing to live within a couple of days. It just depends on what you put in your distribution and what the website consists of. But you can then say that you do offer $500 or $1,000 websites where your nearest competitor for the exact same feature spec, if they're building it by hand, they can't do that. They have to spend upwards of $10,000 to $20,000 for the exact same end result. So a personal distribution is essential if you're a Drupal shop. If you are building Drupal websites, you really need to have something like this. It is entirely essential. Oh, and just quickly, for developers, again, I said it before, no one likes doing boring things. I mean, if I have to, every time I build a website, if I have to download the files and extract them and move them into place, when I could be concentrating on writing some sort of new custom module that integrates with a third-party service, I know what I want to be doing. So yeah, you want a distribution. So let's build one. This is a very basic example. And as I said, everything is at that URL there. So rl.cm/Ezy-bake. The distribution is all committed in GitHub. And there is a simple command on that website there that will show you how to actually compile that distribution and then start using it as if you just downloaded Drupal core. So this is the basic recipe for building a distribution. It may look a little bit scary, but there really isn't a lot to it. You've got one Makefile at the very top, which is known as the stub Makefile, and that references a profile, which has its own Makefile, which references all the modules that you want downloaded, all the themes, all the third-party libraries, all the patches you want applied, anything that you want DrushMake to do for you on your behalf. It also contains the standard install profile things such as a profile file, an info file, and an install file. There's not really a lot to it, and that recipe will build you your own personal distribution. So the first file is the stub Makefile, and it's a very itty-bitty file. That is the file. Each distribution should have one of these, and generally once you've created the stub file, that's it. It will not change. It is constant. And the stub file does two things. It references a core for your site, so in this case being Drupal core 7, and it references an install profile which does all the nitty-gritty. So it's a fairly simple file. Again, it wouldn't be possible without something like DrushMake, so everyone should thank Dimitri when they see him. The profile, this is the profile Makefile, and this is really probably the most and the biggest file in the whole lot. So stub file, tiny, profile Makefile, big. This one contains contrib modules. In this case here in this demonstration, it contains temporary modules. It contains your third-party libraries and your themes. So everything that you want in your site. Your features, anything you can think of that you're going to have in your site, it should be referenced in this file. I'm not going to go into the entire specifics of how to make one. That information is available on the DrushMake project page, but I do cover over some things, but if you want more information, do check out the project page because it does have some very good examples on how to do it, how to check out code from a Git repository or an SVN repository or from your local file system. If it's available somewhere to get, you can tell DrushMake where to get it from and where to put it. So contrib modules, here's just a few samples of contrib modules that this example distribution is using. So there is the admin module, the admin menu module, and the admin select module. Now, the most important thing to take from this here is the versions. Versions are important. They're very, very important. Because if you build the site today and you haven't put versions in, you'll get the stable versions of these modules that are available today. But if admin module releases 2.0 beta 4 tomorrow and you build the site again tomorrow, it will then grab beta 4. That really shouldn't be a problem, but I mean, what sort of developer will release a module that's going to break someone's site? No one would do that. But unfortunately, it does happen. So you have to be very careful. You have to make sure that when you build a site that you wish to package up to rebuild again at a later stage, that you know exactly what is going to be built into that site, that you know that you are getting admin 2.0 beta 3 because it worked when you created the site. You can upgrade the site in the future and add beta 4 if you want, but you'll want to make sure you test that it actually does work before you do make that change. The second thing is, which still really is the first thing, but development modules. Again, you shouldn't be using a development release in your website. You should definitely not be doing it, but everyone does anyway. And if you are going to do that, the problem there is that there is no version identifier for a development module. Development is the version identifier, but the development module today and the development module tomorrow are two very different beasts. So how do you deal with that? Well, instead of checking it out in the standard way of downloading it via Drupal.org, we check it out via Git, and we use the commit version of that module so that we know that we are getting that specific version that we used at the time of building this distribution. We know exactly what is going to be in our code. The other thing that I didn't really touch on here, and Miguel sort of touched on it again briefly himself in his talk yesterday on Agar, which I would have liked to go further into, is patching. You can patch in Drush Make. So if you have the admin module and it works mostly, but it's kind of broken in conjunction with another module that you have, you may need to patch the module. Or if you have another module that has recently in development added features exportability, but it hasn't been committed yet to a stable release, but there is a patch, then you can apply that patch. And it's another reason why versions are important, because a patch is specific to a version of that module. So yeah, you definitely want to make sure that versions are there, and if you need to, put patches in. So temporary modules. I'll touch on this more in a little bit. This is sort of a new paradigm that I came up with recently just for my own personal distributions. But here we have Omega Tools and Xenophile, which, as I said, they have their versions, and I'll get into the reason why I have temporary modules in my distribution. Libraries. If you're building a website, chances are, like Dries mentioned, that you want to have some sort of WYSIWYG. The WYSIWYG module is a great module, but it's just a wrapper. If you actually want to do anything with the WYSIWYG module, you need to have a WYSIWYG library present and ready to go. So there's kind of no point building up a Drush Makefile that downloads all these great modules that aren't ready to go yet, because they still need their third-party libraries to be downloaded. So download your libraries at the same time and tell them where to go. You see in the very first one there, we have libraries, CK editor. That first little section there is exactly where that file is going to live in the libraries directory. Because not all libraries are structured exactly the way that Drupal wants them to be, so you do have to tell them where to go. The other one there is the Profiler library, which is a great little library that Corbin from Lullabot created. And it simplifies the creation of an install profile. In Drupal 6 more so. In Drupal 7 it's gotten a lot better, but in Drupal 6 all the logic for an install profile was done in the .profile file, and it was very complex, and it was basically hardcore PHP. In Drupal 7 they have moved to the info file, but this here, the profiler library, does the same sort of thing. It adds more power to the info file, or it introduces the info file in Drupal 6. So, themes, sorry. Every website needs a theme or it's pretty ugly. Drupal isn't a pretty thing at its core. And a lot of people here, most shops that I've worked with, and I'm sure everyone does it, will start from some sort of base theme. So be it Zen, Omega, or Tau, or your own one. There's no reason why you have to use the pre-contributed themes. But you'll start from a base theme and then you'll generally make a sub-theme from that. So this is where you put them. And the other thing is Rubic. Myself personally, I like to supply an administration theme for my sites just to make the back end a little bit prettier for myself, because there's nothing worse than, especially in Drupal 6, using the standard theme in the back end, and having to actually design a admin theme seems a little bit overkill in most cases. Rubic does the job perfectly for myself. That's entirely up to you. The profile file. So as I said, we're using the profiler library, which means that all we need in the profile file is exactly what you see. The only thing you need to change if you're doing this for yourself is the reference to the actual profile. So you see there, profiler v2 Ezy-bake Drupal. Change that to whatever your install profile happens to be called. This is the info file. So this is new in Drupal 7, or if you're using profile in Drupal 6, this is the same sort of thing you would do here. I don't really take a lot of advantage of profiler here. I just sort of left it there more as a reference point for yourselves and for myself in future, because all of my profiles will tend to have the same sort of structure. This is very much like a modules info file. So we have our dependencies, our core dependencies being contextual, field UI, menu, overlay, and path. Then we have a contrib dependency being features, because features is really going to do most of the heavy lifting for me. And then I have my feature, which is doing the heavy lifting. So this contains all my information, such as my context, my variables. It tells the site when the feature is enabled. It tells the site that I want Rubic as the admin theme, so that gets set. It tells the site that I want this module here, and I want it enabled like this, and that, and that, and that there is the guts of the site, the feature. Whatever you do in your profile, your distribution, you should have one core feature which really sets things in place. And then I have my temporary dependencies, which again, we're going to get into very soon, and they are Omega Tools and Xenofile. I have the install file. Now, the install file, again, like a modules install file, this is where all the logic happens if you want to do anything out of the ordinary. You don't really need one of these files for a standard install profile, but for what I want to show off now, which is related to the temporary modules, you do actually need a little bit of logic while the site's being installed. So when you go to create a new site and you choose your install profile, this code will be triggered and it will do whatever I tell it to do. So, tedium, as I pointed out, is what I want to get rid of. And one of the most tedious things I found when building a new website from scratch, even if I had all the code ready to go, was the theme. Because I used to use Zen quite a lot. I'm just moving over to Omega now. And a common task with both of them is to prepare your starter kit file, your starter kit theme. So each of them a package. Omega has 3 starter kits, Zen has 1. So when you're starting your new site, you'll take a copy of that directory, you'll put it in your site in the themes directory, then you'll have to go through all the files, rename them to be whatever they need to be, rename the functions, etc. And it's really easy to screw that up. And then spend an hour going, what did I miss? And it's generally something very tiny. And they're getting a lot better, but it's one of those unnecessary tasks. When I install my site, I want everything ready to go. I want to just be able to start theming and start using the website. So what I've created here is 2 little functions. You only need one, depending on which starter kit theme you're going to want. And if you're using a different starter kit theme, another base theme, you can make your own one based on this sort of logic. The first one on the left is for Omega, and it's using the Omega Tools module. And what it's doing is it's telling the Omega Tools module that it's invoking the Omega Tools module. It's saying, I want you to create my own starter kit theme for me now. This is the name of my theme, so that first line there, name equals, and then a very nasty regular expression, which is basically determining based on the multi-site directory you've chosen what the code name of your site is, and then it's automatically generating a Omega starter kit theme and putting it in that site directory in the themes. The other one is Zen, exactly the same thing. This is so helpful. It just saves me so much time. I don't have to think about doing anything. I can just, especially when using Agar, just hit a button and everything is ready. Everything's where it should be and it's ready to go. Based on that same concept, I also like to create a feature starter kit. Now, again, if I'm going to create a feature starter kit, I don't want to copy it and paste it and rename it and everything. I just want it to be done automatically. So this little piece of code, also based on the Omega Tools module, I just point it at a directory. I say, there's a starter kit module of some sort here that has a namespace of starter kit and has functions that have the word starter kit at the start of them. I want you to take this whole directory and I want you to move it here, and I want you to go through and rename and prepare everything for me in advance, so when I start using the site, it will just work. Features starter kit is a little bit trickier because you have to make it yourself, but I'll get more into that in a little bit. But that function there, wonderful. If you grab it, you'll probably save yourself a lot of time. So features. Every site needs a feature, and they're very, very, very wonderful things. A feature is basically going to, as I said, it's going to set what your admin theme is, it's going to set up your content types. WYSIWYG is now with a non-stable release, it is features exportable, so you can have your site already have your WYSIWYG profile set up and say, I only use bold, italic, and underline in my WYSIWYG because I think everything's too complex. You can export that rule, so when you start your site, it is set up the way that you use your WYSIWYG. It's set up the way that you've chosen, which means you can actually then go and train every single one of your clients to the exact same experience because you know in your features you've exported everything the exact same way, and there's consistency and there's ease of learning for your staff. Features are wonderful. But there's 2 different types of features for myself in a distribution. There is your profile features. So by putting a feature in a profile in a distribution means that every single site that you build using that installed profile will inherit that feature. So I call this my core feature. So in this case, Ezy-bake core, depending on the project or the install profile, whatever, core. And this contains things that every single one of my sites using the install profile will have. As I said, the WYSIWYG, etc. They're the consistent features for everything I'll build. And the other type is site features. Because once you start building a site, if you have 2 sites running on the same code base in the same install profile, you don't want one feature to be inherited by the other site, because it should just be about this individual site. So that's where the starter kit comes in. When that code is triggered, it takes a copy of my starter kit's feature, it moves it into this individual site, and from then on, from that point onwards, any modifications I make to that feature only applies to that site. But they came from a similar base. And that base, therefore, it has to be generic in the form of, these are things that most of my sites are going to customize. So I use context a lot in my websites, and I have a standard sort of setup. I have front page, then I have global, and then I have not front page. But I have a lot more than that. But most of my sites will have those contexts in them. And those contexts will be used to assign blocks to certain regions, etc., that'll just then be exported back into the feature to keep the configuration separate from the database and allow me to easily deploy the code. So things that I know I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be modifying, I can set up a skeleton in the starter kit feature, and once I've done that, there is a little bit of a manual process let me just go back a few slides, to get this sort of structure here, because unfortunately features doesn't actually let you export a feature that uses uppercase characters. So you will have to export it with one name and then go through all the files and rename them to uppercase starter kit. I could probably change my code to use lowercase starter kit. It's one of those little bits that I probably should have prepared a little bit better, but once you've built your starter kit, you just know that it's going to be cloned into these sites, and those skeleton parts of your feature are just there and ready to go. So that's it. That's really all it takes. I mean, obviously I glossed over it a little bit, but that is the concept. There is your stub makefile, which references your profile, which has a makefile that references everything that you want it to do to bring down from Drupal and from anywhere. And then you have your profile file, your info file, your install file, and anything else that you want done in there. You also generally, if you have custom code that you want specific to this profile, so custom modules or custom themes that are specific to this profile, you can either put them in your Drush Makefile, or you can actually package them up as the same repository as the install profile. So when the stub Makefile pulls down the install profile, they will come down at the same time. Then the profiles Makefile will be triggered and pull down everything it needs, yada yada. But let's build it. Let's actually take that recipe and build a distribution. So if you want to take down the whole network in this place, you can follow along by typing that command into your terminal if you happen to have Drush Make installed, and that will do what I'm about to demonstrate for you. I'm not going to do it live because I'm not insane, but I have pre-recorded this process. I have also sped it up a little bit. It's not slow, but it's dull, so it doesn't need to go for long. So this is it, typing in that command. And first it goes out and it retrieves the first stub Makefile, learns everything that it needs to know, so it's downloaded Drupal 7 core. Then it's gone out and grabbed the profile Makefile and is going through learning about everything the profile Makefile wants and downloading it. It's pretty simple. And Drush Make is a really, really simple tool, and it just does a wonderful job. And that's it. There you go. That distribution has now been created. I now have a directory on my computer that contains a core copy of Drupal and all the additional modules that I told it to do. It hasn't gone through the install process yet. It hasn't moved any of the starter kits yet, because that's not part of this process. That's part of actually creating the site. So I'm a Agar addict. Myself and Brian have actually done a lot of work to make Agar running on Nginx installable on our Macs. So my Mac here is running Agar as my local development. So the next step, I'm going to show the creation of a Agar platform, which my distribution is an Agar platform. That is what a platform is. and then the creation of a site. You don't have to do it that way. Once you've built the platform, the distribution, you can just treat it as if you've just downloaded Drupal core from Drupal.org, and you just modify the settings file and install it as normal. But Agar is much faster. And again, this is pre-recorded because I'm not insane, and it is probably about 500% sped up. A lot of it cut out. I know it took me about 5 minutes when I first recorded it, maybe a little bit longer. This goes for about 25 seconds, so a little bit quicker, but the concept is pretty simple. So creating the platform, I could have put the Makefile there, but I didn't. And platform is created. Creating the site. So I'm making ezy-bake-drupal.com.au, choose the platform, save, done. Easy. Like, I really wish it was actually that quick, but it's still pretty quick. It's a lot quicker than doing it manually. And that there, you've now created a site ready to go, ready to be used, and ready to just theme. That's it. That there may, I mean, in this case, not take 3 days, but in some cases, depending on what you put in your distribution, you've just saved yourself a couple $1,000s. You've just either increased your profits or reduced your client's costs, whichever way you happen to go. It's up to you. So this is the process of the starter kits. This is what has actually happened. So I showed you the code. Now you see that we have a processed Omega starter kit directory. So inside of my themes directory, I now have Ezy-bake Drupal _Omega _theme, starter kit theme ready for customization. It is my personal starter kit. I have a processed Zen starter kit ready to go. So if I happen to be using Zen instead, I can just start making adjustments to the CSS. That's it, easy. And my processed feature starter kit. Already installed, already actually doing what it needs to do. It's that simple. And there you are. There's the site. So we have a site that's ready to use. The WYSIWYG is there. Unlike a standard installation of Drupal, there is a WYSIWYG and it's been configured to do what I want it to do. And I have the Omega theme for my site there in use, ready to be themed. That easy. And that's it. Am I running early or am I good? Questions? Yep. Cool.
Hey Stuart, thanks a lot for all your work on Drupal.org as well.
Yeah,
Top
anytime.
stuff. Can you talk a bit about how the workflow process for maintaining your features, keeping them up to date? Because deploying a site and getting a feature out there is all well and good.
Sure.
Things change.
Yes, things do change. And I mean, that's really, it comes down to what you want to do. You don't have to maintain, you don't have to release a second version of this. I recommend it. It comes down to how you run your business, I suppose. But the process is generally the same as this. I mean, you'll rebuild the distribution. I don't know if you were in Mig's talk yesterday. Again, that's the process I recommend. I recommend you create a new platform. So first you go through this same process, you update the modules, you make sure that the upgrade code is there. If you have to write your own upgrade code, so what? Like, you're gonna have your custom modules anyway. Hook update end does everything that you tell it to do. So there isn't really an issue there. So build a new distribution, deploy that distribution on Agar, clone your site to that distribution, make sure everything's gone through and is acting the way you expect it to. Once you've done that, migrate the site to the distribution. It's really up to you. Yep. Did that answer your question?
Yep,
that's good. Anyone else?
So, this might be a bit long and we might be able to chat about it later. it's about feature strategy.
Yep.
After your core config kind of feature, especially in a team-based environment, how do you break your configuration, content types, and all that kind of stuff into separate features at the outset in project development, and then ongoing as like a larger site sort of carries on?
Yeah.
I know it's a tough one, I'm sorry.
It is a tough one because, again, it is entirely up to you, and I hate to have that answer twice in a row. What I do personally, you have to really think about the site. Every site is different. In this case, a core is going to contain everything that I'm selling to the client. But then if I decided down the track that I wanted to sell an image gallery as a feature, then that is a single feature. If you're talking, what you're really talking about is individual projects rather than distribution-based projects, I guess.
Well, how do you explain a strategy to your team? Like, I understand that you understand features, and
yes,
it's how you translate that into everyone else, and making sure that there is an overall goal for all people involved in development.
I slap them on the back of the head and tell them to do it right.
Yes.
No, I get what you're saying, and it's difficult. You really have to have the discussion with them at the start, at the outset, and say, this is the structure we're going to be having in this site. So think about each individual component in the site. I'll have a core in every single site, whether or not it's a distribution, I'll still have some sort of core. I was actually requested on one of my clients to change it to global because core didn't really make sense in that space. But the website in question had 5 major sectors, and some of them overlaid. But because there were 5 major sectors in that site, it was easy to say, all right, we make a community feature, we make a shop feature, and we break it down that way. And then the hardest thing, I guess, came down to context and making sure that you'd make a context within one of those feature sectors and make sure to package it up with that. And it is a very difficult question. I don't think I've really answered that for you, but I'm happy to discuss further. Yeah.
Hi, I've been doing something very similar for a while. You stressed very strongly to add the version numbers to your contrib modules.
Yes.
Now, I prefer to chase the dragon a little bit and let them catch up, because what you've got when you've got hard-coded version numbers is not a lot different from a snapshot of the site and say, this is our last known good, we're going to build every site based on this snapshot of files. And I see that the advantage of having a formula that rebuilds and remakes itself is that next time you do that, you will get the latest code again.
All right. I put this in specifically because of a client that I followed that same philosophy, and that hurt. That really, really hurt, because I then had to spend about 6 hours trying to figure out what the hell went wrong. And the problem was versions were different between my version of the rebuilt site and their version of the rebuilt site. Think of things like Views 3 and Views 2. They are drastically different beasts. And if you download Views 3, but then you build a Drush Makes for your project and you don't specify the version, well, Views 3 isn't the stable version of Views. Views 2 is. So when it rebuilds and you move your database into this rebuilt site, you've gone from Views 3 to Views 2, broken. It just doesn't work anymore. And sure, chasing your tail and trying to make sure that you get everything really good and the latest versions, that's great in theory, but when you spend 5 hours trying to figure out why one thing doesn't work anymore, like quality control, it's just not a good idea. I really, really recommend. If you're talking about creating brand new projects each time, I think before you start that project, if you have time, depending on how your business runs, to revisit that distribution. Take that time after you've built 1.0 of that distribution to build 1.1 with the latest versions. Make sure everything works, and then fine. have the latest versions then, but make sure you use versions, because if you're using it for deployment purposes, like Mig said, once you make your changes to the development version, you push them back to your make files, you rebuild the platform again, and if there's differences because you didn't have versions and you've rebuilt your platform and migrated your code over and it's gone, you don't want to do that. But that's my personal opinion, so do what you want.
There certainly are all of those risks there. I was just comparing a static site to, you might as well have a tarball after you've gone through all of this build stuff, and you might as well have
Yes, and that's what a distribution is. I mean, you look at Open Atrium, 1.0 is 1.0. You don't build 1.0 on a different day and get a different product. 1.0 is 1.0 until they bring out 1.1.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, that's about all we've got time for.
It's up to you. Yep.